Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's actually morning for me. I'll explain that in just a second. I'm Greg Gilligan. I'm the Vice President of Operations here at RVA757 Connects. Thank you so much for tuning in to this latest RVA757 Connects Virtual Innovation Spotlight webinar. I'm coming to you live from Phoenix, Arizona today, where I'm a part of a delegation attending the Chamber RVA Intercity Visit. More than 200 Richmond area professionals are here this week. And right now, Henrico County Manager John Vitoc is speaking to the group. And about an hour ago, Richmond Mayor Danny Avula spoke as well. At the 2023 Intercity Visit in Kansas, a group learned about PCs for People. In a couple minutes, I'll explain to you a little bit more why that intercity visit brought a really great idea to our mega region. This afternoon, we have a program highlighting a fascinating Richmond startup that is developing a platform to deliver concussion diagnosis. Just think about the potential impact on health outcomes and patient care this company can bring. Before we begin, let me just tell you a little bit about a couple housekeeping matters. First, we'll hear from our sponsor in a moment, Atlantic Union Bank. Then we'll give you a quick update on what's happening at RVA 757 Connects. Then we'll delve into today's topic on brain concussion care. And then we'll leave time at the very end for questions and answers. This is a reminder, we record all of our webinars, so this recording will be available on our website sometime later today. If you have any questions, please use the chat function, and I'll get to those questions towards the end of this webinar. RVA 757 Connects is a nonprofit organization, so we rely on donations for our operations. Here is a list of our corporate supporters. We appreciate and we recognize their support. One of our corporate sponsors is Atlantic Union Bank, the Richmond-based bank that has branches and ATMs throughout Virginia, Maryland, North Carolina, and Washington, D.C. Atlantic Union Bank has nearly $40 billion in assets and is the largest regional bank headquartered in the state of Virginia. Here to tell us more about Atlantic Union Bank is Andy Hodge, who is president of Virginia and North Carolina Wholesale for Atlantic Union Bank. This role includes managing teams across the bank's entire geographic footprint, from Georgia through Virginia and up through Pennsylvania. Andy was promoted to this role in 2024 after serving as head of mid-market and specialty banking for the past several years. Here to tell us a little bit more about Atlantic Union Bank is Andy Hodge.
Very good. Thanks, Greg. Good afternoon, everyone. As mentioned, my name's Andy Hodge. I'm the Virginia and North Carolina wholesale president for Atlantic Union Bank. Been with the bank for approximately 8 years, and I reside in Richmond. Atlantic Union Bank is a proud sponsor of RVA 757 Connects. As someone who has lived in both the 757 and now the RVA, I understand the power that our regions, when unified, bring to the Commonwealth. We're happy to be here today supporting the Virtual Innovation Spotlight, and more specifically, BRAINBox Solutions. Unless you've been living under a rock, artificial intelligence and its so many applications are dominating the business and organizational headlines today. BRAINBox Solutions will be a very interesting session given its AI-enhanced platform. As Greg mentioned, Atlantic Union Bank is approximately $40 billion in assets today, making us the largest regional bank headquartered in the Commonwealth. We do consider ourselves Virginia's bank. We're a traditional full-service bank with 178 branches across Virginia, Maryland, and North Carolina, and over 3,000 teammates helping customers with their banking needs. We have top 10 deposit market share in both Virginia and Maryland. We have grown substantially over the last 8 years, both through M&A as well as organically. Our most recent merger with Sandy Spring Bank in April of 2025 gave us top regional bank market share in Maryland. We cover the entire spectrum of customer needs, from individuals needing a mortgage or deposit account to small businesses to commercial and middle market businesses. And more recently, we have grown our business into new specialty segments such as equipment financing, asset-based lending, healthcare finance, and auto dealer finance. If you haven't spoken to one of our bankers, you should. We believe relationships are still the cornerstone of banking and look forward to helping you with your banking needs. Thank you, Greg.
That's great. Thank you so much, Andy. I appreciate it. And we appreciate the support that we get from Atlantic Union Bank. as well as the support and service of Maria Tedesco, your bank president, who serves on our board. So we appreciate and thank you very much. So let me tell you a little bit about what's going on at RVA757 Connects. Our mission is to improve the economic success and quality of life of everyone living in the RVA, which is the Richmond area, and Hampton Roads, which we call 757. We are a coalition of top leaders of businesses, higher education, and organizations. We're following a national model where nearby localities collaborate on initiatives that advance both regions. We're advancing the mega region from the Metro Richmond area to Hampton Roads as the I-64 Innovation Corridor. You can see we're pursuing several different priorities. We're helping to the I-64 Innovation Corridor to become a global internet hub. More on that in just a moment. We're also advocating for the multi-use trails such as Trail 757 and Hampton Roads, and the Fall Line Trail in the Richmond region, and the Virginia Capitol Trail from the Richmond area to Jamestown, and now there's an extension from Jamestown to Williamsburg that they're planning. You can read more about these initiatives and our priorities on our website at RVA757 Connects. One of our priorities is to encourage collaboration and showcase innovation. We're doing that in a couple of different ways. One is hosting these monthly webinars. Mark your calendar for the next webinar, Wednesday, June the 3rd. We will hear from the Virginia Department of Transportation on updates on the I-64 gap, which is that 29 miles between the Richmond area to Williamsburg, and HRBT. Both of those projects will get updates on. And the advancing the I-64 gap project was a priority of RVA 757 Connects 4 years ago. We advocated for this. General Assembly put in the necessary money, and now this project is underway. So we'll get an update on what's happening with those two projects. Another one of our top priorities is to spearhead efforts to have the I-64 Innovation Corridor designated as a global internet hub. Our plan is a bold and innovative approach to harness a once-in-a-generation opportunity to transform the future of the Richmond region and Hampton Roads. In November, we unveiled our leapfrog strategy called the Global Internet Hub Vision 2035. This vision is the future of our I-64 Innovation Corridor. This vision plan folds out to a 2-foot by 3-foot plan showcasing where and how the world's next data connects, powers up, and stays safe and transforms to benefit everyone. On the other side of this map plan is why our leapfrog strategy is so important. Because today, comparison regions are outpacing us in GDP growth. Regions with stronger digital infrastructure consistently outperform the U.S. average in innovation and competitiveness. Digital infrastructure is a major driver of productivity and GDP growth. Achieving our Global Internet Hub Vision 2035 ensures our economy performs at peak potential. That leapfrog strategy, as we call it, is not just to catch up, but to move us ahead. Standing still means falling further behind. The vision plan maps out 5 different pillars: powering data, for instance, connecting data, securing data, transforming data through AI, and ensuring data benefits for all. And that is one of the things I want to mention today. This is expanding digital equity initiatives. And that's where PCs for People is that last pillar. It's a key reason why we got PCs for People to operate here in our mega region, and why it's so very important. PCs for People is the nation's largest nonprofit refurbisher of end-of-life computers. John Martin, our CEO, and Brian Anderson from Chamber RVA, and others on that Chamber RVA intercity visit to Kansas back in 2023 saw firsthand and learned about PCs for People. We began recruiting them to come to the Metro Richmond and Hampton Roads mega region shortly after that intercity visit. The organization collects these end-of-life computers at no cost to the donating businesses or organizations, then refurbishes those computers and installs the latest software. It then provides these renewed desktop systems to underserved residents and families for free, or sells late model laptops for up to $150 to them. By doing this, PCs for People is also providing tech help support and computer training. Its mission is to help close the digital divide in the Metro Richmond and Hampton Roads mega region. The nonprofit recently opened up a new building on East Pembroke Avenue in the city of Hampton for its intake, data destruction, refurbishing, and distribution center, as well as a retail store, all of which it calls its mission market. The 32,000 square foot store building held a grand opening in early April after spending more than a year remodeling and retrofitting a former Save-A-Lot grocery store. The center will serve a 120-mile plus service area all the way from the Richmond area down to Chesapeake. In the grand opening and ribbon cutting ceremony, John Martin talked about why RVA 757 Connects supports PCs for people and how it fits into our Vision 2035 plan. Then we had the ribbon cutting took place that day, and then the next evening we held a RVA 757 Connects and Chamber RVA held a special celebration in Richmond at our offices in the Fan District. Again, Brian Anderson told the group about how we got to know PCs for People and for that inner city visit back in 2023. And John Martin talked about the connection to advancing our global internet hub initiative and the Vision 2035. PCs for People really basically provides the soul for the need of a global internet hub here. Also got to hear from the new CEO of PCs for People, Susan Parrott. And we had a variety of different guests, including two members from the Virginia House of Delegates, Delegate Betsy Carr and Delegate May Navarre. And we had a good turnout for the event here in Richmond, as well as the one in Hampton. And PCs for People executives posted some very nice notes of thanks for our efforts. Let me tell you, the two events that really energized the PCs for People team, rallying them around their mission and pushing them onward with renewed momentum. Let me also tell you, let me go back for a second. Oops, I missed one there. Well, sorry. Let me just tell you really quickly about a new we have a new awards that we're innovating. We're starting this year. We've mentioned in our webinar email alerts and stuff like that. The award categories are designed to be aligned with the mission of advancing the I-64 Innovation Corridor by recognizing excellence across these various categories: Innovation Award, Infrastructure Excellence Award, the Collaborator Award, and Impact Award. The nominations for these four awards are the deadline to nominate them is July 15th. If you know anybody that you think would be a good person or individual, organization, or initiative, please do so. More details are on our website. Now let's get to today's topic. We'll hear more about brain injury diagnosis. And I'm sure that Donna will be able to tell us much better than I will. But every year, millions of Americans walk into emergency rooms and urgent care centers suffering from some kind of head injury, yet mostly without any really clear diagnosis. Concussions, in part, remain incredibly difficult to detect. Even with advanced imaging like CT scans, the vast majority go undiagnosed because there's no visible brain bleed. This is why today's topic is so very important and why we're highlighting this and why we're highlighting the work of what BRAINBox Solutions is doing. BRAINBox is a Richmond-based startup that's tackling this challenge head on. Let's hear from our speakers. Donna Edmonds is co-founder and CEO of BRAINBox Solutions. She's a serial entrepreneur with 35 plus years of healthcare experience, bridging both the provider and industry segments of healthcare. And with her today also is Richard Noel. He is BRAINBox's senior advisor of clinical market and sales development. Before I turn over the program to Donna and Richard, let me remind everyone that if you have a question, please use the chat functions and I'll get to those towards the end of the program. Now I will stop sharing the screen, Donna, and you will be able to share your screen and tell us more about what's going on with BRAINBox.
Okay, let me just make sure I can do this right here. I have to get this. Okay, is that full screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. First of all, thanks for the opportunity. There are so many intersects here as you're going through. You're sitting in Phoenix. Richard and I were in Phoenix last week talking to the leadership at what is Common Spirit, the Dignity Health Division. It's one of the largest healthcare systems in the country and the largest Catholic healthcare system in the country. They're a development partner of ours. They've been involved in all of our studies and are going to be helping us set the standard of care as a participant. So just one of the major groups and major big medical centers around the country with large balances of treatment centers and emergency rooms that they have under their control. We have the very first objective diagnostic and prognostic platform across neurology. Traumatic brain injury is a concussion, mild TBI, they're interchangeable phrases, but it is an injury to the brain. And the brain, it can be the beginning of what becomes a chronic situation. So we've positioned ourselves to be not just the initial diagnostic for the first injury, but to be able to do diagnosis, monitoring, and therapy interventions throughout the entire continuum. So we're starting with the front end, and we'll be able to manage it all across the entire continuum. Right now, as Greg said, clinicians don't have a definitive way to identify whether the patient has a true brain injury or those who are going to develop long-term complications. That's really the key. We've published in JAMA recently the first 1,000 patients in our clinical study. For those of you that don't know, JAMA is the Journal of the American Medical Association and a premier journal. And basically, it demonstrated what all of us who've been in the field for a long time recognized, that there's a whole lot of people that at 30 days continue to have symptoms, and those are the ones that are most likely to have chronic symptoms for the rest of their lives. So it's an invisible injury. There's a critical need. Let me get to the right thing. This is probably one of the most important things about our organization. This group of clinicians and laboratorians and folks that have worked in the field, there's a large group of emergency medicine physicians, there's neurologists involved, but we actually early on established the standard of care in cardiovascular care. I launched all of the biomarkers that you use now when you go into the emergency room. When they're worried about you having a heart attack, they draw your blood. And from that point on, you begin to be able to decide whether you've had it, what kind of treatment you need, monitor it. Are you going into congestive heart failure? So this group of folks were kind of a wandering group of leaders that has set standard of care. And we've literally written the book. Alan Wu and Frank Peacock, who were two of our scientific advisors, have written a book on this subject. And they've been very involved. We're starting with improving the education in the market, and we're starting now. This is kind of a timeline for those of you, you've talked about us being a startup. We really only became a company in late 2018. One of the collaborators in cardiovascular care was a professor at Johns Hopkins University, and she called me to her office late in 2012 and said, "You have no idea what I've been doing for 5 years. Shut the door. We're going to talk about it." And so when I had the opportunity to take a look at it, we marched down to the Hopkins IP group, and she said, "Unless you give this person the IP I founded, I'm leaving with my $142 million worth of annual funding from the NIH." And they said, "Oh my gosh, you wouldn't." She said, "I'd watch me." So we got access to technology that was filed ahead of most of the biomarkers that people are talking about now very early on. We were running another business. I was CEO of another company, but we had the opportunity, we brought it to the board. They said, bring it in and let's see what we can do with it. So in late 2000, we got an NFL GE award in 2014. We did our first study in 2000 and kicked off the study. At that point, one of the investors that I've done some work with in the past that had been successful, came to me and said, TBI is really a mess. I saw what you did in cardiology. We will invest in the TBI portion of the business, but you've got to spin it out and you've got to lead it. So 2018 is when BRAINBox was born. One of our investors happens to be on the call, a Virginia icon. He's been on our board since, those early days and was one of the folks who helped us make this decision. It is of note, even though our A round and our B round, which we raised in June of 2023 as we moved the business forward. A round is run by a Boston-based VC. B round was led by a Silicon Valley VC. But the largest body of investors in this company are Virginians. The Virginians own 30% of this company. So we're not only a Virginia company, we are dominated by Virginia people. Next slide. There's as Greg mentioned, there are 5 million Americans who suffer TBI who have been diagnosed because they've come into the emergency room, but there's another 95% or so that go undiagnosed. So the numbers are much larger than just what has been reported. There's an estimate that it's at least 70% more. So you're talking, just about double those amounts that are out there that are looking for a diagnosis or come in too late to be diagnosed or end up with symptoms later on. So the need for a very early, accurate diagnosis and then prognosis. Do you have TBI, yes or no? And what is your likelihood of having symptoms, which is really in 14, 30, and in our case, 90 days. That's where the clinical trial runs out. There's an estimate that at least 50% of the people who suspect never get it checked out. One of the largest populations I have a personal interest in is battered women get beat up and they never get to care and they have consequences later on. There's just a whole series. Female athletes don't tend to have as much focus on them. And so there's lots of subpopulations in this group that are really important to get a complete diagnosis on early. What's happening finally is that there is a real awareness campaign going on a national level. It's the Brain Injury Association of America and our local state chapter, the Brain Injury Association of Virginia, is working closely with us and with another Virginia-based location, Canon, who is down in Newport News, is like the third or fourth imaging company in the United States, and people don't actually know that. So between us as a diagnostic, a blood-based diagnostic with neuropsych testing, and themselves, we're working on sort of an initiative at the state level because we have more resources here than almost anybody else in the country aggregated to help advance the notion. So this whole concussion awareness now in October is the month when they exercise that. Is a national organization and a national movement, and all of these various affiliated states and professional organizations have jumped on that. This is kind of the way a schematic that shows, how we're approaching it. Time zero, POI, means point of impact or point of injury. And up to 1 hour, there's a certain set of criteria we look for, and then between 1 and 4 hours, then up to 96 hours. Our FDA submission will allow us to enroll patients up to 96 hours because sometimes people who are playing sports, come in 2 days later or 3 days later and said, I still have a headache. I hit my head or, while playing. So we are going to be able to do a test on people up to 96 hours. But for the most part, the clinical study has demonstrated that about 80% of the people tend to come in the first 48 hours, in the first couple of days. So what we're trying to do is do the diagnosis, and then we recognize the gap. The literature, particularly in Europe, because they've been studying it longer there, particularly in Europe, they've demonstrated that people that play rugby and soccer, their kind of soccer, their have earlier Alzheimer's, have earlier frontal temporal dementia, have Parkinson's earlier. And so we have the capability to measure all of these, but job one is to get the first product in the market, and then avoid the chronicity that goes on from there. This is kind of a schematic. This is what the report looks like. Basically says, do you have TBI, yes or no? And what's your likelihood to have which one of these buckets of symptoms at day 14, 30, and 90. So you can begin to gauge direct therapy, guide therapy in the direction that's the most helpful to folks. There is a whole bunch of pharmaceutical products now in the pipelines coming out. We are partnered with at least one and 2 or 3 more we're talking to, where there will be a test with a positive of our test, then they can deliver the therapeutic at a very short order. So that's probably the most exciting part about the opportunity that we have, is we can characterize the right patients to get the right therapeutic intervention. So there's blood-based biomarkers. That's the little box we'll be using. A digital cognitive test. Neuropsych testing ends up being one of the most important components of this, and it's done very quickly on a gamified iPad. And then we run it through an AI powered algorithm to get a score. This is our breakthrough designation with the FDA. It can be used in point of care or clinical labs. It's a multiplex, which means it's more than one, included with computerized neurological assessments, and it can be done in an emergency room or urgent care center within 96 hours. We have more than 2,200 subjects in just our second study. We actually have 2,700 subjects in between our 2 studies. The study was designed in collaboration with the FDA, and we have 30 sites that helped us pull together the data. They're all over the country. It's an epidemiologically perfect group. We represent the US population. It represents different practice centers. It's divided into a training set and a validation set. You were in Kansas you were talking about the PCs from Kansas. The University of Kansas is another one of our major partners. They're the second largest enroller, and one of the largest. University of Rochester is the largest, and right behind it is Carilion Virginia Tech. Just going back to our Virginia story, Virginia Tech is an investor, UVA Angels are investors, the state organization are investors, and there's a very large group of highly experienced and very committed folks in Virginia and Richmond who have invested in the company to get us to where we are. So we'll have 3 populations we'll be able to diagnose and provide guidance on. The adults, which is a study we have 2,200 subjects in. We've published some data on our geriatric study that's being funded by the NIH, as well as us, which is under folks over 65. When Granny comes into the emergency room after she's fallen, you can't tell whether she's got dementia, Alzheimer's, or her symptoms are as a result of TBI. So that differentiation gives you very different directions as how to treat. And I use Granny because most of the ED guys tell me that it is a female that comes in, but it can be any. And then we have a small pediatric pilot population. We have 450 subjects from National Children's that we have pulled in, and we will be designing a pediatric study. We actually have designed it. We'll do that study as we get funding enough to do that. This is kind of the summary. We have first mover advantage. Nobody else has a diagnostic and prognostic. We have really strong clinical evidence. We have 27 issued patents. We have the largest IP portfolio on the planet in this area. And we will be able to provide an objective, not subjective diagnosis where none currently exists, and be able to start a new standard of care. This is not our first rodeo. We've done it before, and the folks are very committed to doing that. Just a couple more points that I can emphasize. This is our patent portfolio, covers the whole waterfront. along with just a diagnosis, but in conjunction with neuroimaging, which is why folks like GE, Siemens, and Canon are interested in working with us. And then this is a picture of our biorepository. We have the largest sample bank on the planet for mild, moderate, and severe traumatic brain injury subjects. I had one banker for the gentleman here from Atlantic. He said that drawer looks like an ATM to me. You know, if you pull it out, it's just full of value. So every one of our samples is tied to an exact clinical subject. Every vial has a unique number, so we've aliquoted them out as they come in, so we can do research. We have collected DNA, RNA, and DNA on all these subjects. We keep part of that off-site in case there's a tornado that comes through town, God forbid. But we have built this in a way that is valuable for the field, not just us as a company. And I think that's all I have to say. I'm really pleased to be able to be here. And, you know, one more thing, I really believe in this collaboration situation. We're working very hard with a regional organization called the BioHealth Capital Region. I happen to be vice chair of that organization. It coordinates work with Maryland, DC, and Virginia. Other names that are very kind of well-known in this area. Ron Kurtz from Canon is on that board with me. I brought him on, and so is Eric Edwards, who started Flow. Eric and I, you know, started out together many years ago at the Biotech Park. So we really are trying to make a difference here in Virginia. I think that's it for me.
Great. Richard, do you want to add some comments there as well?
Yeah, I think that Donna does an excellent job delivering that presentation. So I just really want to recognize her and all the work that she's done to develop this the company and the market. You know, when I joined BrainBox, and I joined them formally a little less than a year ago, but I've been collaborating with this company for about 3 years. And I have a friend and neighbor whose daughter had a head injury and had these persistent concussive symptoms. And so she's kind of my mental model, one of these reasons of kind of getting up and going to work. I think that when I talk to a lot of people, they have a similar, you know, idea in mind. Oh yeah, my, you know, cousin or friend or neighbor, you know, and she had what we used to just call a bonk on the head. You know, I grew up as a skier, and so we all bonked our heads. And this was a day before, you know, these were the days before everybody wore helmets. And we all just kind of, you know, brushed it off. And some people, this kind of quiet, unfortunate population, about 30% in some studies, go on to have these debilitating post-concussive symptoms. So I'm really excited for the work that BrainBox is doing to better articulate, you know, who's going to go on to have those symptoms. We always talk about the lack of diagnostics. There's also the lack of treatments for this, but it's really hard to develop a treatment if we can't characterize who needs that treatment. So we're really starting to shed light on this invisible injury. I'm just very excited for the potential of this diagnostic tool to really set the standard there and allow an entire ecosystem to grow out of it as we start to pursue articulating and identifying the rest of the patient pathway. You know, we always talk about, you know, we need to know information about the brain 30 minutes, 30 hours, 30 days, and 30 years. And so this is really just starting a journey that can really revolutionize support for what I would argue is our most important organ. I don't know why we're doing anything else for everything without supporting the brain. So I'm really excited for the work and just want to echo the terrific presentation and work that Donna and team are doing.
Great. Hey, so now we're going to do the question and answer portion. And if anyone again has questions, use the chat function. But Donna, let me start off by asking you, so give me a sense of what happens now. I get a head injury. You know, I bump my head, you know, whatever. I got a pretty thick head, but I go to the ER or urgent care. What happens now? What diagnostics do they do now when you go into the emergency room, and how will this change?
Well, that's the kind of a question you ask to the emergency room chiefs or any ED doc that we work with. And basically they come in, it's invisible. So all you can do is talk about what your symptoms are, and they're very vague, and it's kind of hard to discern whether there's anything real going on. So they do this, follow my eye. And, you know, if if somebody comes in with a hatchet in their head or they're bleeding out of their ears, you know that they have a brain injury. But absent that, concussion is really, your head is a skull. I mean, your inside your head is a skull, and it's like a helmet, and your brain bops around inside of it. So if you get hit at the front of your head, it's the back of your brain that gets injured. If you get here, it's this side that goes against, it bounces against that helmet that's inside your head. So it's and it isn't, if there's a bleed, you can pick it up on CT, but 95% of the folks that have TBI have a negative CT. So it's really Dr. Keel at University of at VTC at Virginia Tech in Carilion basically calls it the donut of lies. When you put it in, people, they order the CT, but it doesn't tell you you're well, okay, because for this particular situation. And it really, unless you've had a bleed, and usually if you had a bleed, you have other symptoms that make it clearer. So it really is, more of a bruise that continues to have a chronic path in front of it. So right now they have no objective diagnostic. And just like in the early days, when somebody came in with chest pain before we had a diagnostic that says, your troponin is up, therefore I know that you have myocardial injury. We don't have that now. And now we've really made it our life together to understand what biomarkers go up. And it's more than one. You got to cover the biology, because you've got to make sure an astrocyte or a neuron, or if you've had a microbleed, which doesn't show up on a CT, that you can pick up the details of that based on your blood. And then the functional piece, which is I can't seem to function. My memory, it just doesn't feel right. We can quantify that with these quick little tests and put it together and use all of that information to spit out the score. So there is nothing now. And we're expecting to be able to, and everything's pointing in the direction of being able to have an objective, quantifiable, do you have TBI, yes or no?
Yeah, so unfortunately, if I'm a patient presenting and the doc says, well, your CT is negative, what happens? They say, go on home. And if you're not feeling better in a few weeks, go see your primary care physician. And that's not, we don't think that's good care. And we've seen that getting people into referral services sooner improves their long-term outcome. So rather than waiting to say, yeah, something's still wrong and it's been 14 days and I, can't sleep well and I'm irritable and, having all of these other symptoms, the CT said it was negative, so I must be fine. And it's like we're, making this false connection between the CT telling us our level of fineness when it's just there to tell us our level of bleeding inside the skull.
Yeah, just one more Virginia story. We just collaborated with the VCU Executive MBA program. They asked us if they could do a study for us and what would be the most important. And they did just a terrific health economic study to talk about the profound cost of not diagnosing early, and why it's so important to do that. It's a staggering amount of money that gets spent in the wrong places. The other thing that has happened from a business perspective that's been extremely helpful for us and also demonstrating the awareness and recognition is CMS and most of the insurers now are recognizing that there are biomarkers that can help in understanding neurology at both ends. And they have now cleared coverage for the measuring of biomarkers like ours, so that, and above the numbers that I even dreamed. So, there's now going to be payment for doing the test and using these, the components of the test, which will exceed what we were dreaming of charging for. So the health economics are there, the business case is there, and, we're really excited about being able to both, set the standard of care and create something really special here in the area.
Richard, what's the timetable for this clinical study, and what would be the outcome if everything goes according to plan? What do you expect?
Let me take that one, Richard, because of the history. Richard worked, the reason we know him so well is he's worked for the company that bought the partner that we were going to the FDA with. Very, very, well, the largest diagnostic company, Roche Diagnostics. And Richard, we were focused on bringing this to market then. The company was called Lumeric. And when they brought it in, they recognized there were other components of that diagnostic that competed with some of their things. So they sort of half shelved it, right? So we were on our way to the FDA with our study that the FDA designed with us about 18 months ago. And so after we realized that we weren't, Roche talked to us about saying, well, let's just go see. And I said, if you're not going to focus on it, make it a priority. This is too big. We're going to step back and go someplace else, which is where we are now. The study, we've enrolled as many patients as the FDA has asked us to do. They co-designed the study with us. We are working with a new partner that we have discovered through a lot of work and referrals by folks where we'll have complete control. So instead of waiting, this is a company that we're paying to take us to develop, to put our testing on their platform. It's more sensitive than anything Richard or I have ever seen before. So we are much more comfortable with the fact that it's going to work. So we're working out the final timelines on that. We are being highlighted at the International Diagnostics meeting in Anaheim, California. It's called ADLM, the Association for Diagnostics Laboratory Management Medicine. Sorry, new title. We've got a front and center stage presentation at a key time to talk about what we're doing together. So I'd like to be able to say we're going to be in the market this year. We've slowed down a little bit because they're catching up with us, but we're heading there right after, sometime in 27 early or mid-year, excuse me.
And I think a quick other plug for that new partner company, ProLight. They have been selected as one of the finalists for the disruptive technology contest that is hosted every year at the ADLM meeting. So this is where a number of experts in the field evaluate the technology as it is and recognize it as something that is unique and meets a significant need from a laboratory medicine perspective.
So I guess the hope would be that maybe a year or two from now, if I go back to my, go to the ER, they'll have this diagnostics tool to be able to use.
Damn well better. We're pushing them.
So let's say I do get diagnosed with this. What are the most common treatments? Can you name a few? I mean,
well, as I said, there are therapeutics coming out, but if you have a headache, we can tell, we can be clear about whether it's if you have a headache, it's not going to be migraine. You get treated this way. There are all these buckets of symptoms. And so there's PT, there's occupational therapy, there's vision therapy. There's lots of things you can intervene on now, but we're working in collaboration with folks that will have a drug. Most of them nasal delivered, as it turns out. You blow in a tube or you spray that spray in, so it hits the front of your brain and starts to calm things right down. So there are several of those that we're working with that are moving through. One of them is, enrolling their first 40 patients in Australia, and we are their identified business partner. They're a public company, a small microcap company, but a public company, and they're doing their first enrolling in Australia right now. And Astrocyte Medical is enrolling in Australia. We're working with a group out of University of Kansas as well. So when any one of those therapeutics comes on, this thing is going to be like explode. And they're coming, and they're coming faster than I would have presumed.
I think we're all familiar with the term test to treat now, and this is another one of those examples. Once we can identify who needs it, we can effectively move them into the right follow-up recovery services and ideally have the impactful treatments available from a therapeutic perspective.
So going back to the trial, how many locations will this trial or test eventually be able to be used?
Do you mean how many are going to be our early adopters? I mean, if that's the question you're asking,
Yeah.
my original order is 400 devices. That's my first order. Okay, that's how many people, how many locations throughout, like I said, Common Spirit is largest health, and they're talking about pushing it out through their entire system because they participated in the data and have done other trials as well and said, you have it. So we've got that. We've got 6 hospitals in the University of Kansas. We've got the whole Carilion system, which is 3 hospitals and 6 urgent care centers. Those are our starting partners. So it will be probably one of the largest launches I've ever done. And I ran the worldwide diagnostics business for cardiology for a large multinational. So we are preparing to have a major launch. We just got to make sure that we get the manufacturer to catch up with us.
To pepper in a few more numbers about the broader market opportunity, there are over 5,000 emergency departments. There's a little over 200 level 1 trauma centers. These are the most sophisticated emergency departments with have all the tools and all the specialties. So those are really the key kind of early adopter, broader market. In addition to the over 5,000 emergency departments, and some of those are freestanding emergency departments, people are starting to see those pop up, especially in like Florida and Texas. And in the urgent care space, there's over 15,000 urgent cares. This is something where if you pop into an urgent care, and my daughter fell off the bunk bed, we took her to the Instacare that was affiliated with Intermountain Health. It's a very reputable program, but they said, we just don't have anything to tell you if she's going to be okay or not. So you got to take her over to the children's hospital. So, to avert some of those where, she actually turned out she was just fine, but they didn't have the diagnostic tools at that urgent care level to help triage that. And so they have to, just to be safe, let's move them to these other points of care. So, it's a big market, and there's a lot of places that you may want to go. That are nearby if you suffer a head injury, you or a loved one.
What else? What other hospitals or urgent cares in Virginia? You mentioned Virginia Tech Carilion. Are there any others in the Richmond or Hampton Roads regions?
Well, so UVA is participating in our clinical study. So has Carilion. We work closely with VCU. The head of neurosurgery there is somebody who is an MD, PhD from VCU that they recruited back to upgrade their neurology service. We've talked to the folks at Centera. They intend to deploy it throughout their entire system. The day we're cleared on the FDA. So, we've been approached by a group in Northern Virginia called the Brain Injury Services Organization, who's a CARF certified coordinator of brain injury services, talking and collaborating with the Brain Injury Association of Virginia's chapter. So, an Institute for Brain Health, they've asked us to put together something along those lines for future research, development, and deployment. So, and my being on the board of BHI, there isn't anybody in Virginia we haven't talked to or are not involved with at this stage of the game. It's just a matter of making sure we have adequate funding and make sure that the new partner is catching up with us. They happen to be a public company in a different exchange. So there's lots of discussions we're having about how to grow together.
Donna, what's the biggest or most important knowledge, I guess, that you've gained from this large, clinical study, the HeadSmart study? What's the most important knowledge you've gained from all that?
The complexity of the biology and how every single solitary person is a subject of one, like most lab-based companies have to realize. Everybody comes to this injury with a different set of biology, their genetics, their health, however they've taken care of themselves or however they've injured it, which is why you have to have a multi-marker. You have to be able to cover the biology that is injured based on the physiology that the brain lives in, right? So it's the complexity of the disease. Really, again, She's the queen of cardiology. Almost everybody knows me in that space. The heart just does this. It really is simple. It's a muscle with a pump. It's got some tubes in it. It's very important. And having my original academic preparation is nursing, I happen to have a degree in business as well. But the cardiologist and the neurosurgeon would say, my job is more important than your job. And one would say, but the heart, and they'd say, but the brain. So believe me, the brain is way more complex, way more complex. So understanding that physiology that you bring to wherever it is your injury is, and then being able to understand what your history is and give you the right treatments so that your future is better. And it's people have been at it for a long time, and until you began to realize that you have to cover the biology completely that is injured. And it isn't, one part maybe, and the other part is not, but you got to be able to pick up whichever one is the most dominant.
So Donna, you're a serial entrepreneur and mostly here in Virginia. Can you give us 3 advantages that we could share to others, the rest of the world, rest of the nation, that makes Virginia and perhaps our mega region from the Richmond area to Hampton Roads such a great place for startups like BrainBox?
It's a great place because there's been I think, Greg, you probably know, I actually was on the original board. I see Carrie is listening in. So I was on the original board for helping build out the biotech park. So at that point, when we were building all this, we built an infrastructure that allowed for people to start thinking about healthcare, life sciences, that sort of thing. So starting companies became easier because there was you had collaboration, and we were getting some decent funding. We have now, like VIPC, was the state organization, has invested in 600 startups. Okay, so startups, lots of good things. We can get people going. We're starting, those of us that are seasoned executives in the state and in the region are, spending a lot of time trying to make sure that we are grooming people with enough experience so that they can step in and take this next level. I've run 13 diagnostic companies in my career. It's not like I can't keep a job. It's like I had 7 in one group. And I've sold a couple of them. There are not many people with that kind of expertise, and we're trying to pull them together and get them coordinated. We have had the benefit of very strong investment support by leaders in this state, and I'm eternally grateful for that. Because had we not had that, we wouldn't have been able to sustain the growth or the tenacity to get to where we are. We're grateful to have raised as much money as we have. But again, I'm a seasoned person who understands how to build a cap table and how to manage an investor board. You got to have that kind of experience in order to be able to get to where we are. We were going to market on a B round, which is really unusual. And I've raised a couple $100 million in my career. So knowing how to raise it, when to raise it, who to raise it from, and managing those relationships is not trivial. Okay. So what we're lacking is we've got lots of enthusiasm and lots of things coming out of the universities now. And probably one of the most important things that were done is before Governor Youngkin left, when he standardized the IP across all the universities. So if you file IP in one, all the rest of the universities have to follow, adhere to it's called fast forward, have to adhere to the terms. So now there's less fighting between universities and more coordination in getting things to the next level. And there's been an evolution all the way from way back in the George Allen, Jim Gilmore. I mean, that's when the whole biotech park started. So it's been that transition of things over time, and a lot of the people that have helped continue to see the vision of life sciences being important in Virginia.
No, those are helpful. I appreciate it. Just want to check to make sure, are there any other questions from the audience? Last minute questions we can. Seeing none, I'm going to continue on here with wrap things up with you. Thank you very much, Donna and Richard. Let me just tell you again, if you have any interest in what our focus is, what we're doing in RVA757 Connects, go to our website, RVA757Connects.com. Remember that the recording from this webinar and any of our webinars since 2022 are on our website, so take a look at them. This one will be on our website sometime later today. And as I mentioned, we have them all going back to 2022, our monthly webinars. Remember, next month on Wednesday, June 3rd at noon, we'll hold our next webinar on some transportation updates, getting updates on what's happening with the I-64 gap and the HRBT project. Again, thank you, Donna and Richard, for an excellent presentation today. Very fascinating of what's happening with brain injury, something that we'll keep an eye out for in the coming months and coming years.
Thanks
And
for
also,
the opportunity.
oh, thank you. Yes, Donna. And thanks to Atlantic Union Bank for its support, for not only for our webinar, but also for its support to RVA757 Connects. And finally, thank you to everyone who participated today. Pass the word along. As I mentioned, this webinar will be available on our website. Recording will be available on our website later today. Hope you all have a great afternoon. Thank you again, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Extremely interesting.